Welcome back. This is Brightspace Part 2. We have already discussed content, assignments, and discussions in Part 1. Let's talk about quizzes. When you create a quiz online, you can simply go to New Quiz and start creating your questions. There are some additional options. One of them is Respondus. If you have a quiz to upload, there will be a whole separate video for Respondus. It works with Brightspace, but it is not part of Brightspace. And this video is about creating quizzes in Brightspace. So you will click on New Quiz. And first we're going to go over the settings across the top, and then we will go into the question creation. You may have created categories in your gradebook for quizzes, and if so, you could say that this is part of that category. Here's where we will add and edit questions. We'll come back to that. Let's go on up to the Restrictions tab. First I need a name. Okay, so this is Quiz Example. Alright, so we have a name. We'll go to the Restrictions tab now. And here, the most important box to check is that you want to make it active. By default, it's inactive, and if you forget this box, students cannot see the quiz to take it. So you must come into the Restrictions tab and make the exam active. The next thing you'll probably want to set is a due date, so just check that box and then change the date and the time as needed. And I've already mentioned about end dates. I usually don't use those, I just use a due date. If you require Respondus Lockdown Browser, students will have to be able to download that client piece on their computer. If they're using a work computer, they're probably not going to be able to do that. If they're coming into a computer lab on one of our campus, our center locations or main campus, then you can select that. We do have Lockdown Browser on those computers. So that's an option that you want to think about, whether to use or not. What it does is it prevents students from opening other windows or from copying the test questions. So you know, as you highlight something, you can copy that. Well, if you use Lockdown Browser, it prevents them from doing that. It prevents them from going to another website and looking up information. Also on the Restrictions tab, you can set the time limit, and you can set special access for students who've been identified as needing different conditions. Either they have an excused absence and need a different date, or maybe they need more time. You've been notified they need more time. You can set those different settings here, and it gives you the same page where you can set due dates and you can set time limits, and allows you to select a single student's name, and that student will have different settings than other students. The next tab over is Assessment. This is where you tie the item to the gradebook. I always check this box. I want the computer to send the parts that have been automatically graded, like multiple choice, to go into the gradebook right away. I can, if I've set up my gradebook, I can select the grade item that I'm attaching that to, or if I've not set it up in my gradebook, I can add the grade item. We covered how to do this in part 1, so I won't go through that again. And I want it to go into the gradebook. Okay, I'll have to pick something here. There we go. I want it to go into the gradebook. And here under Assessment, you also select how many times you can take the test. Now, you may have learning quizzes that you allow students to do maybe 2 times, and you can take their highest score, their average, their last attempt, whatever you like. I do that sometimes. I'll create little short quizzes that I want them to use for practice before a big exam, and I'll let them take it twice, and I'll take the highest score. The last tab I want to talk about is Submission View. By default, students cannot see the results of their test. Show questions? No. Statistics? None. If at some point, maybe after every student has taken the test, you would like them to see their own exam for review, I'll call this student review, you can change the viewing properties. This is called view, student view. You can set how long you want it to be available for them to see, how many minutes they can look at the test. You probably want them, you want to click yes. Do you want to show the questions that they got wrong, the ones they got right? I said show all questions, and then I said show question answers, because I want them to be able to use that maybe to review for a final exam would be an example. They can review their past tests if there's any overlap, if it's a comprehensive final, for example. Students might also be interested in seeing the class average and the Bell distribution, so you can decide whether to choose those or not. Yes, so I'm not going to retain that view. So we are back to the quiz tabs, and to get back to question creation, we'll go to Properties tab, and we'll click on Add Edit Questions. These are pretty self-explanatory. I'll just show you a couple of them. Of course, true, false, multiple choice, multiple select, matching, those can all grade themselves. So let's look at multiple choice. By default, it's going to give you 4 answer options. So you type in your question here, you type in your answers, and answer B might be the correct answer, so you check that. I always check this. It will randomize the A, B, C, D options so that if there are 2 students sitting next to each other at the same time, their A, B, C, D answers will be in different order. So I like to check that. You can say how many points this question is worth, and you have some more options here. You can add feedback, you can add a hint, you can drag pictures into this box if you like, if there's a picture or a graph associated, and now we can just click save. Oh, well, we can't save because we'd have to type something. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. So pretty standard kind of options. Multiple select. Let's look at matching. I want to tell you something about matching. So in the matching, they give you 2 choices and 2 matches. Okay, so probably you're going to have more than that. I have 10. So there are already 2 here. I'm going to add 8 more for a total of 10. So I would click Add Choice, and then I would have 10. You have to do the same thing with the matches. So I would want to go to Add 8 more matches. Now notice it will automatically randomize your matches for you. The second thing I want to tell you is your number 1 in the choice section must be the answer to the number 1 in the matching section. So just keep those number 1 equals number 1, number 2 equals number 2, as you basically you're putting question answer to make your matches, and do them in the same order, and it will randomize it for you later. but that's how it will know what the correct answers are. So I wanted to demonstrate that. The last thing I want to mention about your questions options is written response is like an essay. It gives them, they can write paragraphs as long as they need, and you'll have to manually grade that. It will give them 0 points, so you'll have to let them know the computer can't grade that. Don't worry about your score until you, the instructor, have gone in and graded it. It will look like they got a really low score because it'll just count those as zeros until you give them points. Short answer is pretty much the same. There's just less space to write. You actually set how much space you want them to write. Fill in the blanks are usually single word options, and the computer will grade those. But if there's a misspelling, then it will grade it wrong. And the student will say, but I got the answer right. And you'll go in and look and you'll say, yes you did, but you misspelled it or you had a typo. So the computer can't understand that a typo is nearly the same word, that the same word was meant. If it's not exact, it will count it as wrong. So it will grade it, and you'll have to decide if a student has a misspelling or really got the answer wrong. So that is quizzes. Next, we'll look at the gradebook. And in this video, we will talk about grades on a point system, not a weighted system. I have mentioned categories a couple of times in different sections. I'd like to explain why you would have a category if you create new category. You have to use categories if you're using a weighted gradebook, but even if you're using points, let's say you have 11 assignments and you want to count 10 of them, and you tell your class that you're going to drop the lowest one. If you create a category and put all the assignments in that category, then there's a setting in the gradebook where you can drop the lowest one and it will do it automatically for you. So that's a reason to use categories. Right now we're going to look at creating a new item. And you may recall from the previous recordings that you can create the gradebook item as you create the assignment or the quiz or the discussion board. I also mentioned that you can create your gradebook separately and then choose that gradebook item as you create your assignment, quiz, or discussion. So this is how you would set up the gradebook separately and then later tie the items. So we're going to go with numeric. And this will be reading 6. I think I don't have an item for that. And I mentioned the categories. And you can put in the points. Exceed if you're going to give more than 10 points. Bonus if it's extra credit. You can add a rubric. And you can set up under the restrictions tab that the grade item is visible. You can set up, I'm not sure why you'd want it to be visible only a specific amount of time. So we're going to hit save and close. Okay. So you'll find reading 6 here. Now you'll notice it's not yet tied to an assignment or a quiz or a discussion. This box is empty. So I believe I had that in the discussion board. And you would go to discussions. And there's reading 6. And I'm going to edit my topic. I'm going to go to Assessment tab. and I'm going to choose Reading 6 because I just created that in the gradebook. So I'm going to hit Save and Close. Oh, sorry, you do have to enter your score twice. Put it here as well. Save and Close. Let's go back to the gradebook. And we go down to Reading 6, and you can see it is now tied to an item in the course, which is the discussion board. There are cases where you do not want an item that's in brightspace. For example, if you have your students do a presentation in class, you're going to create a new item, and it won't be a discussion board. It won't be something that students put into brightspace. It'll be an activity they've done in class. So we're going to call this presentation or present, and we're going to say that's worth 30 points, and I'm going to hit Save and Close. Okay, so after students have presented, you will come here to the gradebook. You will go to Present, click on the drop-down arrow, and enter grades. And this is because this was done outside of the computer environment, such as an in-class activity. So it will show me all the users, and I can give them their scores by clicking here, and I enter those, and when I get to the end I hit Save and Close. Those grades will then go directly to the grade book. So that's how you would add grades to your gradebook for things happening in class that are not uploaded into Brightspace. So I want to show you one more view of grades. We've just covered how to set up gradebook items, how to link them to activities in Brightspace, and how to grade something that's done outside of Brightspace. I want to go here to enter grades. And you can see all of the columns for each of the grades. So you can always go in here and grade all. If you want to make a change, you can also click on, for example, Dr. Rashad. I could click on that and give him points right there if I wanted to. The last thing is that you should always, at the end of semester, export your gradebook so that you have a copy on your computer of all your students' grades. And the grades in Brightspace are not linked to Banner, so you do have to submit midterm and final grades. You have to log into NMHU's Banner system. This will give you the final calculations, so you can pull the grade from here. You'll have to type it into the Banner system, and that's how your grades get officially submitted. The nice thing about the gradebook, even if you teach face-to-face, is that students will always know where they're at as far as their grade during the semester, so there aren't any surprises. And if there's an assignment missing, they can see they don't have a grade and they can ask you about that as well. So we'll move on to the last two pieces, which are rubrics and setting up groups. So first with rubrics, so you can create a new rubric. Let's look at that first. By default, they're on draft, and until you publish them, they're not available for you to select when you want to add them to an assignment. So this will be a rubric for a writing assignment, and your rubric types are analytic and holistic. Analytic is like point values. I think most people are used to that. Criteria are rows, levels are columns. So if you already have a paper rubric, look at your rows and your columns and criteria is goes in the rows, and it'll be like the quality of information, it was the correct length, use the right APA style, any of those kinds of criteria. Each one that you're grading separately would be a row, so make sure that the number of rows matches your criteria. And then the levels are the columns, and the columns are it's exceptional, it's average, it's below average. And we'll take a look at that. It'll make more sense when you see it visually. But so maybe you have 5 levels, maybe you have 3 levels. I usually use points. You can use text only, which is kind of hard to set a grade to. You want the rubric to be visible to your students, and that is the general properties. Next, you want to go to the levels and criteria. And for each one, you click on the arrow and edit, and you can enter the information. So, for example, if level 4 is exceptional, I'm going to add the information about what an exceptional answer is for criteria 1. Again, edit your criteria. Maybe that will say quality of information. Exceptional would be that the student had additional resources and synthesized the information above expectation. So even at the beginning, if you set up 3 rows and 4 columns, you can always add additional here if you've changed your mind. So once you've entered the information, you can hit close. I think it will be easier if I just show you one that I've already created. So let's go there. And again, you can copy paste from a paper version if you have one already created. So here's a discussion board rubric. I can edit the levels and criteria. And here you can see quality of information is my criteria 1, and I have 2 more that I would fill in. And I would do that by going here, edit criteria, and it opens the box. And I can change this name to meets APA style, and then I can put in the levels right here, and the points that excellent, average, below average, so I can change these. Their point values, I can give them a description of what that means, etc. So that's how you add in information for each criteria and each level. And again, you can go here and edit and make those changes. So the overall score in my current system is 8, 5, and somewhere between 0 and 5. So once you've created your rubric, you can then add it to whatever assignment or discussion it goes to. Finally, we have groups. You may have students doing groups. So if you need groups set up, you need to contact the IT department. They appear to have turned that off at the current time. And this concludes Brightspace Part 2. Please contact Diana Mars at dmarrs@nmhu.edu for additional assistance. Thank you very much.